Hey folks, Doggo Running here. I am going to tell you a little bit. I've had so many questions on how to clean back springs, actually two questions on how to clean back springs. I've also been asked, what do you use to preserve your knives? All right, and how do you inspect your knives? So that's what we're going to go over today. I've laid out a few tools here that you can see, and I'll explain what everything in here is used for and how you would clean your collector pocket knives and or take care of your carbon steel knives, because anybody that's had a carbon steel knife knows that they tend to rust. So that great edge comes at a cost, so you have to maintain your knives or they're going to rust. So the first thing you'll need is a flashlight, magnifying glass. I recommend a 10 by. Okay, a 10 by. I have two of them here, a 10 by. All right. Then you also have your standard, just smaller magnifying glass, which I'll use to look over the knife very quickly. But to locate corrosion, you'll really want to look at the corrosion. What happens is rust absorbs moisture. It's almost like a sponge on your knife. All right. And what you want to do is to stabilize that. A lot of times you will not be able to remove a rust spot. You will always have that brown or tarnish there unless you are willing to really remove a lot of metal from your knife, which does not increase the value. You do not want to take a collector knife that's old and polish it, because what you've just done is ruin it. You do not want to remove that patina or that old flavor that knife has. Okay? I see so many knives that have been over cleaned on eBay. They've taken a knife that's 100 years old that most likely had rust on it, and they took it to a polishing wheel, and it looks like it's brand new. What they have done, in my opinion, they have destroyed that knife. Absolutely destroyed it. Alright, so what we have here is just any type of pick will work, and you don't want it to be a metal pick, you want it to be plastic, some sort of plastic. I got this one from CountyCom. It's actually used to clean guns, but it works wonderfully on knives and getting in between those spacers to get to the back springs. Polishing sticks. You can get these at any pharmacy. These are actually for nails. Okay, you want. I rarely use the heavy grit, and the heavy grit, I don't know if you can hear it. Listen to it. Is not very heavy. I usually use the polishing side. Listen to this. You can't even hear it really. That is enough to take and remove most rust. As you can see, this brown, that is rust that I've removed from multiple knives. Okay? Once you remove that rust, you have removed that sponge that absorbs moisture. Okay? You might still have a divot. On a microscopic level, or on a 10 by level, you will actually be able to see the pits, or the eating away of your metal that the rust has created. All right? Once you've removed that loose material, the sponge that actually absorbs moisture and creates more of a divot in your knife, you'll want to stabilize it. Okay? You will stabilize it with mineral oil. It says lubricant laxative. You can get this at any pharmacy. Okay? Mineral oil, if you look on the back, you'll look at the active ingredients. It'll say active ingredient, mineral oil, 99.9%. Okay? This is what you want. There's many types of lubricant mineral oils. You can buy mineral oil that is specifically made for metals, woods, etc., etc. But I'm going to tell you, those are expensive. Mineral oil is cheap. Okay? It is nothing fancy. This right here costs about $2. Okay? All right. So the thing that's wonderful about mineral oil, it does not absorb atmospheric moisture. Okay. So what that does is it basically coats whatever you put it on, and it will stabilize that rust spot. Okay. You can also put it on. You can put it on your knives that have either bone on them or stag or whatever. It'll also preserve these particular things too, because you can also put it on wood. Okay. So mineral oil is used as a laxative. It's used to clean off makeup off females' faces or males, you know. And it can also be used to clean your ears. Okay. So it's a wonderful lubricant that has so many different types of uses. It's like a waterproof film. So you can use it on your knives, your every type of knife, every type of metal. And it will not eat away at them. Ballistol, on the other hand, it's a wonderful preservative, especially on blued metal, okay, which is guns. Because blued metal is protected. It is not like a carbon steel that is really susceptible to rust. What Ballistol does is actually, it is very much the same thing as mineral oil, but it has additives which loosen and actually eat away at coatings. So if you have a knife that maybe has a gold plating on it or any type of etch, the Ballistol is not something you really want to leave on those knives for a long time. Okay, it won't kill them if you use it on it, but you really don't want to use it on any type of coating. All right, but it does eat away at the rust very well. So this is what I'll use to clean my knives, or a knife that's been really highly rusted. I love this little tip on here because you can get to those back springs. But back springs, unlike a blade that is very shiny and non-porous, a back spring, if you look at it with your magnifying glass, it is generally not polished. Sometimes they are polished, which is a good thing, because if they are, you can really clean them very well. But usually they're not polished. They have divots in them. You can see the grains of the metal. You can see areas where moisture can get into those crevices and create a rust spot that you cannot clean. And honestly, you really don't want to clean it to the point where it's gone, because like I said, you'll have to remove metal and weaken the overall knife to do that. So the idea is to use something flexible like this, all right, or a towel to get into those crevices and clean out that loose material. And once that loose material is gone, at that point you want to stabilize it. So like when I sell a knife, I'll say spots are visible but all stabilized. What that means is I've cleaned them out and I've stabilized them. I did not clean them to the point where I've polished the damn knife and made it something that is not of value anymore. A good example of that is my first knife that I received. As you can see, the patina is still on this knife. This is a Remington. This knife actually got me started in knife collecting. This particular knife was covered in rust. Okay, so instead of taking like a hard sandpaper or the rough side of this to remove it, I actually removed it by soaking it in Ballistol, all right, and actually just wiping it off. All right, and then I preserved it with mineral oil. This has sat in my case and not touched for about 4 years, and the rust is not returned. Okay, that's the idea. You don't want, and I could polish the knife back to its original state, but that defeats the whole purpose. Okay, so we'll get to it, and I'll show you myself actually cleaning a knife, and you see how I do it. And the tools that I have are the polishing sticks, like I said. I have the rubber erasers, or they call them rust erasers. Okay, they're actually flexible. I have one that's pretty aggressive. I have one that is semi-aggressive, which is actually just rubber. All right, and then I also have a piece of leather which has some polishing compound on that. I will use that on a blade, sometimes on the blade itself, because the blade is coarse. Unlike the smooth area right here, the blade is coarse. Being coarse, just like the back springs, it tends to absorb moisture. In turn, you might get a rust spot on your blade itself. Okay, that's where you can be a little bit aggressive, because people are used to seeing a blade that's shiny right here. So you can actually use your leather to remove that rust spot very gently, but aggressively with some polishing compound. Okay. Alright folks, well, welcome to this is a Remington collection and some odds and ends also. Look at the stag on this thing, by the way. This was actually customized by a buddy of mine quite a while ago. This was a Fightin' Rooster, which is an older knife. and it was made out of cell. Cell, matter of fact, I have an example of that. This is cell. Okay, this is an older knife also. Cell tends to shrink, but it's very beautiful. But not only that, is cell can actually degas. When it degasses, what happens is it literally just splits, and it actually gives off chemical fumes that rust the blades, okay, which will also rust anything it comes in contact with. So if I had a cell knife and I put it in this collection, closed it on up, and came back, and this cell decided to degas on me, what it would actually do is it would corrode anything it was in contact with, if not everything in this case. So you always want to keep your cell knives away from your other knives. All right. Well, this cell knife was completely degassed. So this knife was totaled. It was no longer a collector knife at all. So what I did do is have it polished and cleaned, and now it looks almost brand new. It was a lost knife, what we call junk. And for about 50 bucks, I took a lost knife and had it customized, and I think it's rather beautiful. Really nice. But back to how you clean these things. Now these are older knives, and a lot of these did have rust spots down in your back springs. So how do you get in there and clean them? Well, the first thing you want to do is, I'm going to move this. From a distance, what you want to do is you want to back up a little bit. All right, take your flashlight and look in there and see if you have any corrosion. Now this particular knife does not, but as you can see, there are a lot of crevices in this knife that can get corroded. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually just clean this out, and this is what I'll do when I receive a knife like this. I will take my Ballistol, and let's say there's some loose corrosion there. You can see the rust forming. You can actually see maybe a few spots on the blade that the rust is also contaminated. And you're just going to spray your Ballistol right on in there. And what I'll do is I'll let it soak. I will literally just let that soak for hours. I'll take if I get a bunch of knives, what I'll do is I'll lay them out and I'll spray them down with the Ballistol, and I'll just let it soak. I'm just going to let this soak on in on your back spring, and I'll turn it over and get the back of the back spring. And I'm just going to let that soak. Now, time lapse, we've let that soak, and what can we do? All right, I'm going to show you how to clean out your back spring. I take a piece of cloth and I'll fold it into a little triangle just like this. And this seems really easy, but it is actually pretty aggressive, because what you've done is you've put on your knife a metal eating compound, which is not very aggressive at all. I mean, you could literally store your knife like this for years and it's not going to eat away your metal. But it does very well on cleaning rust. Now I'll actually take this and I'll stick it on in there. I'll get it all the way to the bottom. And I'll verify that it's all the way at the bottom by looking down the back spring. Once I know it's down the bottom, I'm going to take it and I'm just going to go back and forth and rub it out. And I'm going to tell you, you'll be surprised how much gunk will come out of your back spring. As you can see how it's brown now? There was actually a small amount of rust in there that you couldn't even see that this Ballistol picked up. If you look down there, it's really shiny. So cleaning out all your knives is important. As a matter of fact, if I look down in there, you guys can't see this, there is actual rust forming on these back springs. You guys can't even see it. I mean, actually on the liners. And that's what we actually cleaned off. I didn't even see that when I inspected the knife. So I'm going to spray it one more time. Matter of fact, since I found it on that one, I'm going to check them all now. So I'll line up all my knives. Look at these beautiful Remington knives. They're absolutely gorgeous. Yes, they're Delrin. Delrin is not like Cell and does not explode, but Delrin does have a tendency to crack. So if you ever purchase a knife like this and it does have Delrin, the first thing you want to do is inspect down by the bottom rivets. Now this one's not cracked, which is very unusual. Most of these Remington knives, the double-bladed, are cracked. I actually have ones that are not, which are extremely rare. Yeah, all mine are not cracked. I was very lucky. So I'll take them out, and boy, for you bird hunters out here, here's a nice one. Real nice one. It's got a little shotgun chuck gauge. Okay, so I'll lay them out. And we'll spray them out. Now, these are not very heavily corroded, so you can actually let this stuff sit just a little bit. And this is what I'll do. And I will let that sit on there for a little while. Look at this old case here. I wonder if this one has corrosion in it. These cases are pretty good on not getting corroded. They are pretty heavily stainless. It's your little fighting rooster. Alright, so let's say we have one that has a lot of corrosion. We really want to get in there. Okay. Now remember, you're using the force of just you pushing down on the cleaning rag with just your thumb. The next aggressive means would be to use a pick. And the pick, what that'll do is you're basically taking a pick and you've got a pretty hard surface to clean basically anything. So I'm going to take the one that does have a little bit of rust in there. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to stick it in there. I'm going to verify that it goes all the way to the bottom because a lot of times it won't. Jam it in there. Now you got yourself a serious cleaning machine. And this is pretty aggressive. I'm using a lot of force to clean out your back springs. There you go. You don't want to scratch it. Now if I look down in there, I have cleaned all that rust out. And that's the rust that came off this particular knife. And you couldn't even barely see it. But it's there. And it's thinking about causing problems. And that bothers me. Okay? Your rubber erasers, I've showed you how to use those before. You want to go very gentle with these. And when you remove a rust spot, especially on your blade, you'll want to feather it out. Because once you remove that rust spot, you're going to have a clean spot. Because this is very aggressive. And having that clean spot does not look good on your knife. So you'll want to feather out that thing. Just like you're painting, you want to get those brush strokes, make them not visible. And you can do that with this. Your files are wonderful. Using increasingly less aggressive grits, you can literally refinish an entire blade with one of these nail files. Wonderful. And you'll have your... Look at that. I wonder if you guys can see that. Look at that. Looking down in there. And you'll use your flashlight. Alright, so these tools are very important to taking care of your knives. So I hope that explains something. Now once I've finished taking care of these knives, what I'll do is I'm satisfied with this particular knife. In order to store it back the way it was supposed to be, I'm going to do a half hitch there. Stick it all the way down in there. Clean out the ballast stall. just like that, and the knife is clean and beautiful. At that point, I'll line up all my knives, and if you could picture this, I have all my knives. And the beautiful thing about mineral oil is it's not poisonous or anything. You can just put it on your little hand like this. And I'll take all my knives and I'll just wipe them down with mineral oil. Make sure to get it all in there. You'll have residue of Ballistol in there, and that's fine. I'll work it a little bit, get it in all the little nooks and crannies, just like that. Now let that sit for a little bit, and once that's done sitting, I usually have a rag that's basically covered with mineral oil when I'm finished, a little rag like this. You want to leave your knife completely soaked in it, but let's say I soak these for quite a while, maybe about 30 minutes. Let it get all in there. Close that on up. Lightly wipe it down. And at that point, it is ready to go in your case. And you do not want to touch it with your hands. Okay? You want to put it back in your case with the rag and slide it back in your case. And it's got, basically, it's completely protected from anything happening to that knife. Okay? So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Y'all take it easy. Dog out.